The meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. on February 12, 2010 was a mundane one. Routine, really. It was located on the third floor of the Shelby Center for Science and Technology at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. 13 professors and associated staff in the biology department were gathered in a non-descript conference room. The head of the biology department took a seat and turned to the person next to him to pass her a printed agenda. And Amy Bishop took it calmly, not letting on at all as to the awe-consuming rage boiling just under the surface of her entire being as she thought about her purse nearby and the loaded handgun inside that was easily accessible for what she had planned. Hi, welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you for joining today. It means a lot that you give me a little bit of your time, and I really do appreciate it. I can put you in a mansion somewhere in Wisconsin. That's how much I appreciate it. If you are new, welcome. Hope that you subscribe to 10-Minute Murder so that you can easily come back and not miss out on any new episodes. Plus, connect with the show on social media so that you'll see all of the visuals that go along with the stories that I talk about here. And you can slide into my DMs too. Not in that way, but in a, hey Joe, what's up? Can I talk to you about this particular story kind of way. Links for where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are in the show notes of this episode. Okay, now to today's story. Amy Bishop had been a high achiever since childhood, described as a bright and emphatic child with notable achievements such as being an accomplished young violinist and a star student. To her peers, Amy was seen as a loner and aloof. Amy had a little brother, Seth, with whom it was thought that she was competitive with, but those who know them at the time insist that the Bishop kids were close. Life in their small town of Braintree, Massachusetts was good for the Bishop family, up until one night in 1985 when their house was broken into and valuables were stolen while the family was out. As a result of that, Amy's father purchased a shotgun and kept it unloaded in his bedroom closet with a box of shells on a nearby dresser. On December 6, 1986, that same shotgun would make a reappearance when Amy's mother and brother were located in the kitchen of their family home. Amy, according to her mother, came down the stairs carrying that shotgun and told her mother, quote, "I have a shell in the gun and I don't know how to unload it." Amy's mother told her not to point the gun at anyone, and Amy swung the gun around to show it to her brother, and it went off. Amy had been standing close enough to her brother that the shot hit Seth point blank. Seth collapsed to the ground in a bloody heap, and Amy fled the scene with the shotgun to a nearby auto repair shop where she pointed that shotgun at employees trying to get a getaway car. Braintree PD were called to the scene by Amy's mother, and after they had been notified of what happened with Amy's mother stating that the incident was an accident, the police department began their search for Amy. In the meantime, Seth died from the shotgun wound to his chest. Amy was apprehended by an officer and taken to their station where she was interviewed. She said that she had loaded multiple shells in the shotgun and after attempting to unload it herself, asked for help from her mother and brother and accidentally shot him. When asked if she shot her brother on purpose, Amy answered no. That entire incident was deemed an accidental shooting, and they absolved Amy, who was 21 at the time. But the profound damage to Amy's family and her mental health was already done. Amy received no counseling or psychiatric evaluation after her brother's death, and instead tucked away all of the trauma that haunted her as she started to experience hallucinations and began to hear voices. Amy completely disregarded her troubling mental health and compensated by pouring herself into her academics. Soon, Amy graduated from Northeastern and started the PhD program in genetics at Harvard in 1988. Amy married her husband in 1989 and in 1991 gave birth to the first of their 3 daughters and 1 son, all the while pursuing a PhD and several postdoctoral appointments. Amy continued to consider herself a success often boasting about her achievements, but to her peers, well, Amy was described as brittle and imperious, and increasingly volatile. It was no wonder she was under a great deal of pressure to succeed in a demanding profession that can be inhospitable to women, while also caring for 4 young children. Amy was also the sole breadwinner. But the stress of keeping her family and herself afloat all seemed to be a struggle of the past when Amy was appointed a tenured track job at the University of Alabama in 2003. The situation started to disintegrate soon after when Amy failed to meet many of her job requirements and proved to be a horrible teacher. Because of this, Amy was denied the ultimate achievement of becoming a tenured professor, with at least one member of the committee concerned that she was, quote, crazy. Amy attempted to appeal the decision, but it was clearly final. Amy would be out of a job after that final semester. She began to fixate full-time on this injustice, and the stress created by the inability to cope manifested physically as hives and mentally as hallucinations. Amy began to hear voices again. Her behavior was so alarming that her colleagues would refuse to have meetings with her and would often request police escorts anytime they had to have any type of confrontation with her. At that time, Amy told one friend at the school, quote, "They act like I'm going to walk in and shoot somebody." As Amy walked into the 3 p.m. meeting on February 12, 2010, she felt one more injustice in the fact that her participation was completely unnecessary, and it was embarrassing. All points on the agenda were concerning the fall semester of 2010, and by that time, she would no longer be employed by the University of Alabama. Just as the meeting was about to adjourn at 4 p.m., she finally had enough. She stood up, pulled her husband's 9mm gun from her purse, and proceeded to shoot 6 of her colleagues. 3 survived, and 3 did not. She had every intention of killing more, but her gun misfired and jammed. It ended just as fast as it began, and Amy moved to the next phase of her plan. She walked to the women's restroom 1 floor below, rinsed off the gun, and stuffed it, along with her blood-stained plaid blazer, into a trash can. Amy then walked into a lab and asked a student if she could borrow his cell phone. She called her husband from that phone and said, quote, "I'm done." She was ready to be picked up from the school. Amy then walked out of the building and was promptly apprehended by a sheriff's deputy. After being arrested for the mass murder and assault of her colleagues, Amy said, "It didn't happen. There's no way. They're still alive." She claimed to remember nothing of the shootings. On September 24th, 2012, Amy pled guilty to the mass murder and aggravated assaults she inflicted on 6 victims and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Any appeals that have been filed on Amy's behalf since, so far, have been rejected. That's today's 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. Thank you for listening today, and if this was your first episode, I hope that before you go, you'll subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes of 10-Minute Murder. And also, if you subscribe, it makes it way easier to go back and listen to previous episodes. There are over 200 of them, so there's a lot of catching up you've got to do. If you want to also connect with 10-Minute Murder further, you can see the visuals that go along with these episodes. Nothing gross and graphic, but I post them all on social media. Links for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are in the show notes of this episode. Or just as easily, you can type 10-Minute Murder into the little search bar that's inside Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and then it'll pop right up. Lastly, if you really enjoy the show and you want to help the show grow, you can let your friends and family know about 10-Minute Murder. If reviews and ratings are available wherever you listen, I hope that you'll leave me a 5-star review and rating, and that helps the show grow as well. Thank you for listening. Be safe and make good choices.